Welcome back to the second hour of the show with no name for January 4th, 2012, the 11th day of Christmas.
2013.
Welcome back to the show with no name for January 4th, 2013, the 11th day of Christmas. That's true, right?
Yeah, the dates are right, just the year was wrong.
I was so thrilled with myself because I wrote a check to the church on January 1st and I wrote 2013.
Yeah, I did the same thing yesterday.
But then I forgot to bring it. It's still upstairs. So, yeah. So if they're wondering why they're a little late this week.
Now, if you did write 2012 on it, they wouldn't be able to cash it because it'd be a year overdue.
Old. Yeah, yeah. It's very confusing. Very confusing for future historians, for example, because I got a hold of a couple letters from Paul Romeo, who was hurt in the war. He used to run Paul's Confectionery, Frank Romeo's father.
Wall Street.
Frank came by last summer and brought me some stuff, and it was very confusing because the dates didn't seem right to me. It's February 44. No, he didn't. No, I was sure he didn't. Okay, that's
maybe empty, huh?
And that was the arm of my beloved Anna, who will be celebrating her birthday on Sunday. Really.
It's okay, nobody watches your show.
Oh!
What'd you say?
Said nobody watches the show. It's okay. All in the family. There you go.
Oh, no. Then why am I here?
That's why your boxes were empty that you got for Christmas.
I meant none of my friends.
I got to move this because this is not a product placement program on YouTube. Otherwise, I have to declare it. All right. Anyway, where are we?
Frank Romeo.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yes, it had the whole year wrong, and it almost really threw me. But then I started thinking about it. I said, no. He got injured in France, and then we weren't in France in February '44. So the whole
he had the candy store in the corner of Grove and
That's
Liberty,
correct.
right?
That's right next to the convent. Yeah.
The candy bar in the showcase was probably 4 years old.
That's my recollection.
But then the guys in the back room were playing with contemporary money.
He was a good guy. He sponsored our softball team when we were juniors. So. Paul's Confectionery. Oh, what a terrible team. John Quattrini was the coach.
Wow, that says it all.
Well, because John Quattrini was the coach, Jimmy Schechten got to pitch. Because he was his brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Well, he later became the fire chief. You know Jimmy, don't you? Jimmy Schechten. He was a fire chief for a while.
Not when I was there.
Well, not when you were there. No, he's my age. He's not 140.
How am I supposed to know this?
Who'd you have?
Palumbo, Schwartz.
Oh, you were Schwartz too. Yeah.
Schwartz, yeah.
Well, that was his son I was talking about earlier on the last hour, Eddie Jr., doing the number with Dick and Sonia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, my God, what a character actor. What a character. He also starred with me in Star Spangled Girl, directed by Dick and Sonia. What could go wrong did go wrong. When you're doing live theater.
Yeah. Especially
when there's only 3 characters, and if you forget a line, boy, somebody better come up with one. Oh, jeepers.
Geez, I was on stage when, let's see, what year was that? 1940, 40-something.
What stage were you on?
School play.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was your part?
Main character.
Really?
Yep.
Is that right? So you're a thespian?
I'm a thespian.
Oh.
An old one.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Then you never took it up afterwards? You never joined the little theater groups? Or?
Never did anything after.
Wow. Well, it's not too late.
Yeah, it is.
No, they still write parts for guys.
Old guys? Yeah.
Guys like you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Driving Mr. Jim. Wow. So I'm doing this scene with Eddie. And it's a fight scene. We actually come to blows. The 2 friends come to blows over the girl, naturally.
Yeah.
And And it's kind of critical to the subsequent Neil Simon dialogue that I give him a karate chop on the wrist that breaks his watch. And he spends the rest of the scene whining about the watch. Well, in all moving about, his watch came loose and went flying off his wrist. and this is a small theater. There's 200 people here. Everybody can see the watch is now on the floor. And I do some super duper quick thinking. I go over and we stop the action altogether. I believe this is your watch. And it's broken. He can't get it back on. So he puts it in his chest pocket. And when the time comes, I give him a karate chop that would have restarted his heart if it had stopped. And then we were able to go on with the dialogue, which is good.
On with the show.
On with the show. And I don't know if it was that performance or another performance of the same show, but early in the show, there's an unseen character, the landlady, Mrs. McEnany, and she calls. And I'm supposed to flirt with her because the rent's due, and if I keep her happy, she's not going to throw us out. So I got all this done. Whoever's supposed to be ringing the phone backstage doesn't ring the phone. They missed the cue altogether. So now Schwartz and I are just ad-libbing dialogue, waiting for the phone to ring, and we're going back and forth, and you can see the guy the stage manager backstage flipping through where are these lines, you know. Finally, Schwartz turns to me and he says, "Why don't you give Mrs. McEnany a call?" I said, "That's a good idea." So I call her up and reverse all the dialogue in my head as we're going along. But that was great stuff. That was great stuff.
There is no group like that in Amsterdam anymore, is there?
No. That Around the Claire's kind of died out when just about all the couples involved with it got divorced in the same year. I was serious. I'm serious. It was. And I seem to recall being at a Christmas party where all of them were there. And a year later, none of these couples were together. So it was.
I think Gloversville, Johnstown still has a theater group.
They still have the Colonial Theater.
Colonial Theater, yeah.
And I tell you, they do marvelous things. It's a very tiny theater and a very tiny stage, and they've managed to figure out how to do it. And there are no wings. There are no wings.
I mean, a couple of them there. And they were good. They were really good.
I saw them do Bye Bye Birdie there. Now, a full-blown musical, mind you. Some years ago, maybe about 10 years ago. And virtually everyone was on stage at the same time, no matter what was going on. And if you weren't in the scene, you were a piece of furniture. or something like that. So a couple of people would be a couch, and they would throw a slipcover over them, and somebody else would be a chair, somebody else would be a table, and it was easy. There were no scene changes because there was no place to store scenery. So everybody would just move around, and the show would just go on and on and on.
Hi,
so it was fun.
My adoring fans.
See ya.
Goodbye, Anna. Anyway. It was just great, and 2.5 hour show was reduced to an hour 45 minutes because there were no delays. Just boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Anyway, they do good stuff up there. I wouldn't call it a New Year's resolution, but I got a New Year's
thought.
No, an aid, not like a human aid, but.
I'd be drinking it.
There's a writer's store or something, and they were giving away what they call their Seinfeld charts, and it was modeled after something Jerry Seinfeld said about at the beginning of the year he would put together a chart with 365 numbers on it, and each day he wrote something, he would X out the number. And this way, it forced him to keep the X's going. and so that every day he wrote something, whether it was a lot or a little, but every day he wrote something. So I started that. It was great. So I'm finishing up my book, and it never seems to end. But
you're going to have to end it.
Huh?
You're going to have to end it.
I'm going to have to end it, and I'm just about done. And I did the Father Sidoti chapter a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
What a guy!
He was a pastor in Gloversville for.
Oh, yes, he was. When
years.
he went to war, he was at Mount Carmel.
Yeah,
that's right. In his 20s. In his 20s when he joined up.
Yeah.
Did he join up as a priest or as a?
As a priest, yeah. He went in as a chaplain. Which is nice because you go in like as a first lieutenant or something, and then after you complete your school, they make you a captain, which is,
Pretty small squadron he has.
Are you kidding? He had God's squadron. And it's funny because in doing the research, I came up with some stuff like when he was first ordained by Bishop Gibbons, they had a party for him here in Amsterdam, and the pastor of St. Michael's, who had encouraged him to become a priest, was the master of ceremonies, and Father Beck was the associate at St. Michael's at the time. I don't think Father Beck was ever at another church than St. Michael's, was he?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he went from associate to pastor.
He was gruff.
Oh, he's a great guy. I love Father Beck.
Oh yeah, he was a great guy, but that deep voice.
Today I'm going to tell you the story of the mother of a priest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, at the party, this is 1940, is the Consul General for Italy stationed in Albany. Albany has always had an Italian consulate.
Really? No, I didn't know that.
And of course, they were not our enemy at the time, and the Italian consulate was very happy that this Italian-American boy became a priest. So this Count so-and-so was a guest of honor, and I'm thinking, a year later we're kicking this guy out of the country. And Father Walsh from St. Mary's said to Father Sidoti, "You are now a soldier of God."
Yeah.
Anyway, he goes ashore with a medical evac group, which was kind of like the MASH units were in the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
They were on the front, and then they would send them back to the field hospitals. But they did the first aid. They were the closest to the front, and so about 3 weeks into the Normandy campaign, he's with this hospital group, doing that stuff, and then once Patton comes in, he gets transferred to the 358th Regiment as the 3rd Battalion chaplain. So he's responsible for 3 companies or 4 companies of right as they're crossing the Moselle River, he gets his job. The Moselle River was a major barrier between the Allies and the Germans, because on the other side of the Moselle River was the Maginot Line. All those forts that the French had built to keep the Germans out were now being turned around to keep the Americans from coming into Germany. And beyond that, on the next ridge was the Siegfried Line, where the Germans were doing had been doing the same thing to keep the French out. So they have to cross this river in November, the coldest Novembers on record. Okay,
like yesterday.
Yeah. Well, yesterday was January, but it was like. It had rained for like 3 or 4 days beforehand, and the only way they could make this attack, they had to do a frontal assault, but they had to have the element of surprise. They had to do it at night. So they have to carry these heavy boats like 1,200 feet to get to the river, which is about 350 feet wide. And Sidoti is on the first boat that crosses to the German side. He's the first one out of the boat. And he sets up an aid station in an old cement factory, and then for 36 hours straight, he's shuttling men back from the front, the wounded from the front lines to the other side of the river. Now, I mentioned that it had rained for 3 or 4 days beforehand. The rains caught up with the river. It was the worst flooding in the history of the Moselle River. And it went from being 350 feet wide to being 2 miles wide.
And they had to transport them across.
And they had to transport across. And now, as they were supposed to be building bridges at these spots. Now the engineers can't build the bridges. Right, so the guys who are already on the far shore are alone. They don't. The tanks aren't following them. They're going up there with small arms attacking forts, and they do it, and they succeed. And like 2/3 of the boats that are coming over with supplies, because now it's the only way they can do it, are swept downstream. And Sidoti is crossing back and forth over the stream, bringing the wounded to the other side, for which he earns his first Silver Star. And he gets, a couple of weeks later, he's evacuating. They're now over on the in the Saar Valley, and Shell goes. He's rescuing some wounded, bringing him back, and shell bursts over his head. He gets shrapnel in his shoulder and his arm, and he bandages himself up, walks 1.5 miles to the nearest aid station, and then he's in the hospital for 4 months. They thought so highly of him that they kept his position open. They did not get a replacement chaplain until he was ready to come back. And now he writes a letter to his mother when he's sent back to the front in March. He says to his mother, "Here I am, back again and happy as a lark. You should have seen them welcome me. They yelled all along the streets and roads. You see, Mother, here is where I belong, where I am needed." This afternoon I said Mass for them in a German church. It was crowded to overflowing. There were Protestants, Jews, and Catholics. When I turned around to talk to them, I had a big lump in my throat. They looked so good to me, so faithful. The colonel was very kind to me and thanked me very profusely for coming back. He never got a replacement for me. Well, Mom, time is short, but my love and longing for all of you at home is eternal. However, my duty to God and my country is, and justly so, greater and very obvious. Please try to understand. I know and feel that you do. You are the world's best soldier. It's Sullivan Ballou, isn't it?
We talked earlier, a year or so ago, about this, but the quality of the writing that people had when they wrote back just to their families was unbelievable.
Right.
The level of thought, the grammar, the vernacular they wrote in is so superior.
The careful phrasing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and he's not a professional writer, though I'm sure he had to write a few sermons in his time.
Right.
It's wonderful, and we talked about this earlier when we were talking about the Civil War. The quality of what survives that people wrote is wonderful.
Right.
You get such a flavor and a feel for what they were experiencing and what they were missing back home.
Yeah. Well, which is why I mentioned Sullivan Ballou, because this sounds exactly, and he probably never heard of Sullivan Ballou. But Sullivan Ballou writes a letter home to his wife. He was a junior officer in a Rhode Island regiment, and he writes a letter home to his wife where he says, in words or substance, "Sarah, my love for you is endless, but my duty to my country drives me ever onward, And I wish I could live to see our sons grow to honorable manhood. And,
Ken's Burns, Civil War.
Yeah. Burns used it to great effect. But this is exactly what he's doing. He's trying to placate his mother. He was the only child of his widowed mother.
Yeah.
And he goes right back to the front. 4 days later, they're under attack from the Germans, and the troops become disorganized because most of the officers had been shot, and nobody's issuing orders, and they're in a tough spot. Sidoti goes out and he under heavy fire and starts pulling the wounded off the battlefield. And according to his second Silver Star commendation, he so inspired the others that they reorganized themselves and went on to win the battle without another casualty. But he even went out and pulled a body off the field to get the body behind cover.
Yeah.
But his influence alone did that. And at some point, according to his family, and I have no reason to doubt the anecdote, the Germans asked for the Catholic chaplain to come minister to them, and they put up a flag of truce, and he crossed the lines and said mass for the Germans, and the German general took a Silver Cross medal off his own uniform and pinned it on Sidoti. So he may be the only guy who was awarded
a German honor,
an honor by the enemy. That's something. He was quite the guy. He was. I met him when we were first married. We lived. I was still going to law school, so we had an apartment in Albany, and St. James Church was down the street. So we started going there. I mean, at that point we were coming home on weekends as often as not, but we started attending St. James, and after a couple of weeks we said, well, let's join the parish. We're in the neighborhood, we're going to be here for a while. So we made an appointment to go see Father Sidoti, and he sat us down. I said, Father, we'd like to join your parish. We've come to Mass here the last couple of weeks. He says, center aisle, 2/3 of the way back, right-hand side.
You recognized who?
Yeah.
He didn't miss a trick. And then we got talking and found out that he was from Amsterdam, but I didn't know the rest of the story at that time. And it turned out, he's a relative. It was Mark Fry, who lived down the street here. Was a year behind you.
Yeah. He's out in California now.
Yeah, out in Seattle. Yeah.
West Coast, West Coast.
West Coast.
I met him once when I was a kid in Gloversville. Don't remember much about him, but I remember the name.
Did you belong to that parish? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he organized the CYO up there, and I guess they ended up organizing the CYO for upstate New York. And he was quite the athlete. He played football at Niagara, and there's some indication he may have played football at Notre Dame first. He spent a year at Notre Dame, and then he transferred to Niagara. He was a starter on the varsity, starting right tackle or something. Captain of the boxing team at Niagara. And there's some indication from his private papers that I found that he was refereeing boxing matches during the war too, when they had time. And he also played varsity basketball, I believe, at Niagara.
Really?
So, yeah.
The home court of Father Barry.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And after the war, he becomes a chaplain for the 27th Division, which is the National Guard for the state of New York. Retires with the rank of general.
Oh, did he?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, is he the last chapter in your book?
No.
No?
No. No. The last chapter also has to do with St. Michael's. So the book ends as it began. I start with Company G marching off to war before there is a war in 1940, and the last chapter is the last guy who comes home. It was Louis DeLello, who was a parishioner of St. Michael's, and they find his body and identify it in 1991 and send him back here. Well, when word got out that the last World War II body was coming home, most of them came home in 47 and 48, the thing got too big for St. Michael's, and they transferred it to St. Mary's, and so the Mass was held at St. Mary's, and then he was buried in St. Michael's Cemetery. So
interesting.
It ends with his funeral.
So you've actually written the end of the book.
Oh, I wrote the end of the book long before I wrote the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's you know, it's like when Burns was doing the Civil War, that you get these symmetries that you can't ignore. I mean, one of the most ironic things about the Civil War is that the first battle is fought in the front yard of the guy who decided he's going to move his family away from there to someplace quieter, like Appomattox.
Yeah.
So it begins in his front yard and ends in his front parlor. I mean, holy mackerel! Homer couldn't have written that, right?
No. 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 So your book you finish in time for Christmas next year? So
my goal is to finish it by the end of this month, but I'm not close. I'm not close to finishing the writing, and then it's just the formatting it and adding the pictures. I've deliberately kept the pictures. I got some great pictures along the way, both on the internet and well, you saw the one of my father coming home on the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what else is going on in the world? We had the fiscal cliff came and went while we were vacationing.
I guess there's another one coming up.
There's another one coming up.
There's several actually.
March. You have to say March.
Yeah,
Or
March.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I have not been thrilled with the way Speaker Boehner has handled his end of this. I thought he showed a lot of a certain amount of lack of leadership in how this thing went. And I wouldn't have been surprised if there had been enough votes to dump him yesterday.
Yeah.
And there probably were, but they decided to keep him anyway. Because I think they all like him, even the ones who aren't happy with him. That having been said, I'm not sure I completely agree. I realize it's the arrangement that they ultimately made was pretty lousy. There's no spending cuts. I mean, we've still got trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. They did nothing to solve any of the underlying problems. Taxes did get raised. I just got an email from my wife. She's got 28 fewer dollars in her paycheck today than she did the last paycheck.
Oh, because of the increase in FICA.
Yeah, among other things. Yeah. And there is a lot of taxes that went into effect January 1st that were not addressed by any of this. So the middle class gets taxed, the upper echelon gets taxed. But having said that, for the last 11 or 12 years, whatever it is, since the Bush tax cuts went into effect, they've been temporary. They should have been made permanent at the time that they adopted them, but there were enough Democrats to stop it in the Senate, and so they put together this kick the can down the road thing. And they've been using this fiction ever since that that because that is the law, that the taxes are all going to rise on January 1st, 2013, and it's all figured, so the budget deficit isn't as bad as it is. Well, sure it is.
When they passed this one, did they put a sunset clause in it?
No. This is why I think 98% of the tax cuts were made permanent, which means the Democrats no longer have that leverage of if you do nothing, the taxes are going up.
They've lost it.
And to trade away the over $400,000 to get the rest of it made permanent, I think was a good deal. Now, in the next phase, the Republicans are holding all the cards. Of course, Obama's talking about ignoring the law and just keep the deficit going up, regardless of whether there's any approval from Congress to do it.
Has the law ever prevented him from doing anything in the past?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. There's only one. There's only one remedy, and that's impeachment. But now, all spending is supposed to originate in the House of Representatives, and the permanent deficit, the permanent debt limit has to be raised, or they have to stop running a deficit. And that they've already actually reached the debt limit. Now they're just juggling the books for a couple of months to make it otherwise. Personally, I think as bad as it was, as bad as the turnout was, I think Obama handed the Republicans what they needed, which is to keep that awful issue of everybody's taxes going up from hanging over their heads.
At least your income tax from going up.
Yeah, right.
Your other taxes certainly.
Right. Meanwhile, today naturally now that the election's over, the unemployment rate went up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it shouldn't be a surprise. Everybody's laying people off because of the Obamacare, and a tremendous number of places are cutting back everybody's hours so they're not subject to the Obamacare. And I don't know how they expect a $1 trillion program to not result in everybody's expenses going up.
But it's not a tax, so it doesn't matter.
But it is a tax.
No, it's not a tax.
But it's not, well, yeah.
Anytime you have less money in your pocket, it's a tax.
It's a tax.
Tax.
I had a dog, his name was Tax. I opened the door, an income tax. Boy's Life, 1958.
Yeah, great magazine. Nowhere's near as good today as it was. They still do. It's not as good.
Yeah. It, well, of course, used to be a lot bigger, too. It had that big, well, life-size, literally life-size magazine.
Yeah.
And now it's like Newsweek size, which is like almost non-existent.
Which isn't a whole lot different from Time.
Yeah.
So the only thing to talk about now is the weather.
We got more control over the weather than we do over Obama.
Yeah.
His taxes.
Well, except the snow plowing and
parking. Jim was talking off camera that on the radio today they were talking about the plowing situation in Amsterdam, and he'd gotten here before I did. So before I came up the walk to join the show, there's a gentleman on the radio, and he said, the problem is we've just got too many roads in Amsterdam. And I don't know which, I like these guys, I like Sam and Mike, and I don't know which one said it. He says, no, but the roads in Amsterdam are not meant for the size cars that we have today. I'm thinking back. My father had a 51 Hudson.
Yeah, right,
that's bigger than anything that we drive today, okay?
Exactly.
Now, maybe it's bigger than when they had the horses and wagons, it wasn't. But when they started having cars here in the 40s and 50s, by golly, those are big, those were tanks.
And this is not the north end of Boston, where the streets are 4 inches wide.
No, they're not. It's,
I don't know.
But they said they've issued 252 parking tickets for parking on the improper side of the road. They've only towed 2, though.
They only towed 2 cars.
But they've ticketed 252.
They're going door to door and say, come out and move your car.
That's all right. First time around.
First time.
This isn't our first rodeo here in Amsterdam. But
No, I know, but I'm wondering how many of the 200 were actually in the way of the plows
No.
too.
Well,
as a man of law,
Yeah.
you can probably answer this question precisely. I was always under the impression, and I believe it came from my parents when they were teaching me to drive, that when you park a car, you have to be 50 feet from the corner. And our colleague Jim says, no, that's not true. You can actually park right up to the corner. Now, is that true or not?
Yeah, that's true.
It's true. What, you
Unless
park
it's
up the corner?
otherwise posted.
Okay. Now, we were coming home the other day with my son.
it's posted on Phillip Street.
Is it?
So far from the corner, yes.
Yeah, well, they don't follow it. We're coming home with my son the other day, and we're coming over Phillips towards Northampton, and I stopped. He says, "Why are you stopping?" I said, "Because there's a car coming around the corner." He says, "Yeah." I says, "So I'm going to stop here so that car can come around the corner. Because you know what's going to happen if he stops there? He's going to get his rear end run into because cars coming down there, and if all three of us are there, he couldn't pull in there. You know what happened? He got in there, and his car comes flying down.
Wow.
Because you don't have room
Right.
on Phillip Street for 3-car wide. You barely have 2-car
Right.
wide in the wintertime. But you go on a lot of streets, the cars are parked all this way, and you can see where the plows have tried to come
Right.
down, and they've left
It's difficult.
they've left piles all over on both sides because cars were parked on both sides. And on most streets there is enough room for everybody who needs to park if they all just take care of themselves on the right side of the street. They don't have to worry about it. But it's not
I don't know.
but on Phillip Street they park right down to the stop sign.
Yeah. And
you can't see coming
that's
around.
a tough street.
It is.
It's a
Tough
street.
neighborhood.
And it's it used to be on the bus route too, on top of everything
Yeah,
else.
the school bus comes over there in the morning, but it's. I think it's just a lack of consideration and civility upon
What I
the
don't
part of the people.
understand, I understand how you got to put your priorities on the hills and the major routes. You certainly want to keep Northampton open, Market
Yeah.
Street open constantly.
George Street.
George Street, because it's a hill, gets better attention than a lot of side streets do. I don't understand, even in a major storm, how you can go 24 hours without some streets being touched at all.
Yeah, that's the
That
ridiculous.
makes no sense to me. I can understand why you can't keep up with it, but I don't understand why you can't get through one. And I say this
at
with
least one pass.
yeah, I say this with some experience because when I was running for mayor, these many years ago, in 1983, one day, probably with Michael Chiara, I think.
A young Michael Chiara.
Huh?
A young Michael Chiara.
A young Michael Chiara. We got a sound truck, and I think Dominic Salamak owned the equipment. When I say a sound truck, I mean my car with a speaker hanging out the window. We drove around the city with me plugging myself for mayor. Okay? It's a rather foolish endeavor. But in any event, we were going slow enough down the city streets so that I could get a quick message out and people in the neighborhood could hear it. And there were a couple places where people actually cheered when I went by. And
Are you sure it wasn't when after you had passed?
no,
they cheered? Okay.
because I know who the people were, and I remain very fond of those neighborhoods to this day.
Okay.
One guy I later put in jail, in fact. But he was hanging from the third floor porch cheering for me. He's since gone straight, thank God. My point is, we went on every street in the city that day. Every single street. Now, we went one way. I didn't go back and forth. I didn't go two sides. I went on every street in the city, and it took us 2.5 hours.
That's it?
One vehicle.
Wow.
So I can't understand why. We got a couple of pickup truck plows. I can't understand why those can't make just one pass in the course of 24 hours.
The pickup truck is what they did Phillip Street the other day.
Well, that's the
They've
right
got
thing.
one, they've got one plow for the east side of Market Street and one for the west side. And they're supposed to concentrate on those areas. That's what used to be,
The big plows.
the big plows. And the other plows are supposed to take care of these side streets that
Right.
the big plow can't take care of. But the problem is, they go down the street, and they go down the middle of the street without the wing of the plow, you know, pushing it up against the bank because they're going the wrong way on that street. Or no matter which way they go. If the, like Guy Park Avenue, if they're going west and they stay close to the north side of the street, how do they put the wing over to the south side of the street? Because there's cars coming up and down, not parked, but coming up and down the street.
Yeah.
So
the gentleman on the radio who said that we have too many streets as part of the problem also said, what do they do in these other countries like Norway and Russia? Well, I can tell you for a fact, first-hand experience, they don't plow in Russia, period. They wait till the sun takes it away, or you just wear it down with your car. All right, plowing is not an issue there. It just doesn't happen. And then maybe that's what we're trying to do in Amsterdam, you know. But you know, you would think 24 hours at the end of a storm, you'd have every street would have at least one pass through to make it more drivable. But it is what it is. This is
it is what it is. Yeah. We were actually buried pretty good here. Of course, it was a foot of snow, wasn't it?
Yeah, the good foot.
But it was a long time before we got any. I think early in the storm they went through once, but the next time they went through was more than a day later.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, they plow my street. Sometimes you hear them go one way, they go back, you know, 3 or 4 times in a day, and they're not parked. They're not doing the side streets.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the bosses? Where are the bosses? Where are the planning? Where's the planning? They used to have a schedule of this. They're going to do the hills first, and then they're going to take the other streets one at a time. I don't think they do it anymore. I think these guys just do what they want.
Yeah.
Well, they must. If they're not hitting every street, then they're doing what they want.
I would love to be a snowplower. I love the feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, sure, but these guys, their accomplishment is the overtime.
You know, and I don't think it's a whole lot different than it used to be. So I remember riding the Henrietta Glen from St. Mary's, and Bill Stanley getting stuck on Glen Avenue and having to back down and do the route backwards, going out and coming up Henrietta, do the heights, and then do Market Hill section as opposed to going that way.
I don't remember it ever being good here. It just. And one of the reasons is that if elections were held in February, it'd be a lot better. But people, if I may say so, bitch and moan through the winter, but when come November, they've completely forgotten.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was telling you, but on my side of the street, there's no parking from 8 to 5, period.
Ever.
Not Monday through Sunday, or Monday through 8 to 5, period, because when I put that resolution, I forgot to state except Saturday and Sunday. So it's every day. Every day, one of the neighbors will park on that side of the street. Every day. I called the police once because the guy was parked real close to my driveway and I got hot. They came up, they gave him a ticket. 2 days later, he's parked there again.
Wow.
Now the police know that there's no parking there.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to call, on my neighbors because they're my neighbors. But they know there's no parking there. How come? And they go by every day. How come they don't give them tickets?
Is this one of the neighbors who's been on our show?
No.
Okay.
No. Who's on our show with neighbor?
Never mind. We'll talk later off camera.
Now, going from January to February is going to be an issue for a lot of people.
Why is that?
Well, you're going to have to be parking on the outside of the street 2 days in a row, and that's going to screw everybody up.
That happens every year. That's true.
Yeah, it gets everybody discombobulated.
Yeah. Well.
But maybe we won't have any more snow. And we don't have to worry about it.
Now I see the big headline in the Recorder today. Well, I'm looking at the size reading the paper over here. At the big case, I think it was from St. Johnsville, where somebody gave the cop a finger and got pulled over, flipping the bird.
But don't people realize that was already settled back when Rockefeller was governor?
That's right.
It was. That was the first test case of the middle finger.
What do the Romans call it?
The emperor's salute?
Digitus,
Middle fingerus. I don't know.
Impolitus, the impolite digit, the impolite finger. Yeah.
Because Rockefeller had that first case that somebody flipped him the bird and they went to court and they were allowed it was permissible.
Right. They said, well, I guess what they said was that wasn't reason enough to pull a person over. And of course there's Court of Appeals cases saying that it's not in and of itself harassment. Nor, that's basically a sticks and stones rule. You can call somebody anything you want, and it's not harassment. However, the Amsterdam Police Department over the years has had some pretty clever guys. And I don't know, should I mention the guy's name or not? Oh, anyway, he's now a retired policeman. Still lives here. Retired policeman is on his way home.
This is before he retired.
Yeah, well, yeah, on his way home in his own car, and he's at that arterial intersection in back of the Y where Route 5 hits Route 30, and in his own car, and facing west, and this car comes barreling down Route 30, going right through the red light, and he leans on his horn. And the woman flips him the bird.
All
right. Well, he's now contrasting with the St. Johnsville case. He has a reason to pull her over because she just went through the red light. So he follows her in his own car, pulls her over, and he happens to have his ticket writing book with him. So he gives her 2 tickets, one for going through the red light, and another one. And she says, "What's this? What's this other one?" He says, "Improper use of hand signal." She said, "What?" He said, "This is not a proper hand signal." She made it.
Oh, that's funny.
Our guys can think quickly on their feet, I'll tell you.
Well, the case I remember in Amsterdam that caught me was back, I guess we were younger, and somebody blew a stop sign on Guy Park and Wall, and he got a ticket, and he fought it, and they discovered that the stop sign had never been put up by ordinance, and therefore was a non-binding sign, so you didn't have to stop at them, so they had to go through and do every...
Well, in fact, at that point, hardly a single stop sign in the city was valid under the ordinance. Yeah.
And by some law that I think it can only be so high.
Well, there was that issue with the blinking red light by Mohawk Dairy, whether it was the proper height off the ground, and it wasn't by a couple of feet or something.
It was too high or too low.
Well, either.
It wasn't proper.
It wasn't proper.
And if it's not in the book, it's not a law. If it's not in the code,
you can't prosecute somebody for something you made up. Yeah. Essentially, it has to be properly adopted.
I remember that.
That's basically.
That was one of the big questions that Davis says. He says, "What streets can they park on one side and what they can't?" I said, "You got the code book."
All right, the code book is very explicit.
He says, "I want somebody to tell me," and I wanted to call because I'm getting hot because I can't stand this guy. Look in the damn book. You've got a book. Everybody's issued one.
Right. And we used to modify that all the time. That's how we would modify it.
And a new page would come in, and you take out the old page.
You would add,
like policy.
You would add that section of McFarland to the ordinance.
how can he, of course, the people don't know that he has the book, that he can look it up himself, that he wants somebody to tell me.
Well, that's one way of doing it. It's one way of doing it.
Make him look important.
Oh. So what else is happening here? I'm tired of complaining about the weather. I like it cold.
I'll tell you, I like the cold weather better than I did the snow, better than I did the rain. I don't like the rain.
Don't like the rain?
Don't like the rain. Even though I had to go out and snow blow, and when I get the snow blower out, my wife says, "Where are you going?" I go down the street, all the way down to the corner to corner.
No wonder you kept getting elected.
Yeah, my people didn't elect me. They were all against me.
Oh. Well, maybe you did a lousy job.
Blow the snow the wrong way.
That could have been.
Is it a driver or you walk behind?
Walk behind.
What about yours?
Uh,
El shovel.
I've never had a. Well, I've got an electric one, maybe a couple of them, electric shovel, and if it's 6 inches or so,
it's okay as long as it's not that wet.
I don't bring it out that often, but that packing snow we had last week, forget it. Well, the kids did a nice job. They made a whole family of snowmen out back, snow people, including a drunk whose head was on the picnic table. They made like 6 of them and had them sitting around the picnic table. It was pretty cute. Of course, I got all these artistic children, plus their cousins.
You get two little minds together, you can't tell what they're going to think of.
Jamie did a heck of it. I can't even begin to tell you some of the things he did. You can see some of the paintings he did in the other room.
I was looking from here.
The old sailor is him, of course. That's actually Laura and Anna. Laura dressed as Belle and Anna as the Little Mermaid with her triathlon number on her shoulder. He did one of me. It's in the kitchen. It says Chef Boyardee. He took the Chef Boyardee and put my face under the thing, and it's fantastic. Then he did these. Really surprised me. This is a picture of my mother that Uncle Nilo took when she was for her high school yearbook picture.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jamie colorized it. This is
Way.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah.
On the computer or by hand?
On the computer. On the computer. That's what he does. And if I can reach this one behind you.
He's got to have a.
And he did the same thing with Mary's mother, Harriet. This is her Navy uniform when she was in the waves in World War II. So he knew how to work with the Navy blue, the blue sky. It's phenomenal. I mean, look at the shading he's got in my mother's picture here.
She's hot.
That's terrific.
Your mother's hot.
My mother was a very good-looking woman. Yes,
sure is. Yeah.
Turn around for the camera so they can all see the other way. Yeah, she's 17 in that picture.
17?
Yeah.
Oh. Talented young man.
These and more things will be appearing on Facebook from time to time.
How old is she?
Huh?
How old is she now?
Oh. My mother?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. She would be, were she alive, she'd be 87.
Oh. See, now, if I'd have known her, I'd probably have hit on her. She's a beautiful woman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, she was a widow for a long time, but then you had a wife at the same time period.
Hate when that happens.
Yeah. Those things happen.
Yeah.
Bad timing. It's all in the timing.
It's all in the timing.
That's right.
All the timing.
But I'm happy. 60 years with the same woman.
Yeah.
You're a better man than I, Gunga Din.
Well, there you go. So anyway, so we got all these paintings lying around. Little Bob is going on a cruise today. We're going to be later this afternoon. We'll be able to watch the Disney Cam, watch the cruise ship pull out of Port Canaveral.
Where are they going?
Like 7 or 8 days in the Caribbean, and then they come back, and then they're going to spend a night at Disney World before coming home. So,
wow, is that Caribbean or Caribbean?
It depends on which part of it you're in.
Which part is he in?
He's in the Caribbean.
Oh.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's
momentarily.
They're named after the Carib Indians, who settled. They originally came from Georgia, I believe, and then they got into the island. Yeah, they know this. Yeah.
Indians know that too.
Yeah.
Hey, did you see the big controversy that gentleman is saying that
the treaty is not a treaty?
It's fake.
Oh, yeah.
And that their 400th anniversary is all based upon fraud because it's not a real treaty.
Yeah. Yeah. So what?
Yeah. At this stage,
you know, and they didn't really say anything in the article about it. They just
right.
The whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I was very disappointed in the article because it didn't tell you what the controversy was.
No.
I mean, I kind of got the gist was that it was whatever the treaty was. It was not put into writing till a long time afterwards.
that's what I got out of it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and they cited it for Fenton, who is deceased, and this other professor from SUNY, and the research couldn't find anything.
Well, yeah. So what? What does that prove?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. If they couldn't find anything, they can't prove what was wrong then.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You know, because the wampum belt they were going upon was made later, and just. Everybody wants to throw a stamp on somebody else's parade.
I know. Yeah, right. Yeah. What's it? It's not like there's any legal issues involved here. So you celebrate the meeting of the two civilizations, and they're coming to terms. You know?
That's basically.
It doesn't even matter what the
Yeah,
terms are anymore.
No.
Yeah. That's it. It's exactly right. It's just wanting to. Hey, I know. I'm smarter than you are. Yeah.
That's what happened.
We got to put it down. You got to put down George Washington. You got you got to do all this. But he didn't brush his teeth one day. He wasn't perfect.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody is, and they shouldn't be held against them.
That's right. That's why Father Anthony would never give you 100 on a test. You get everything right, and he'd give you a 99. They say, Father. Iggy. No, Father Anthony, Father, Reverend.
Yeah.
How do you explain this? I got nothing wrong, and yet I got a 99. His explanation was, only God is perfect. It was a theological exercise.
Yeah, with himself, I guess. Yeah. Iggy.
One of my grandsons got semester paperback 4.0. He didn't want to tell his mother. He says, well, why? She says, because you'll expect it all the time.
Absolutely. When my students went to college, I told them, hold something back. Because if you get a high grade the first semester, they're going to expect it every semester, and you can't do it because then you're taking harder stuff. Just let them work up to it. And I did that. I had a 169 my first semester, and I worked my way right up.
You got what?
169.
169 your first semester?
Yeah.
That was your age or what?
No, that was my. And fortunately, I was on the cross country team and I got an A in PE to get it up that high. Yeah, I didn't realize you're supposed to take your first semester.
I shouldn't be looking at you like this because my first semester I ended up dropping 2 courses before the.
See, you avoided those Fs. I did. I took that F.
And I was on pass fail, so I didn't even I knew I wasn't going to pass them, so I withdrew. So I only had 9 credits my first semester.
Why do you keep coming to me?
I mean, I had a valid excuse, but still. But one of them was calculus, and I've never learned it to this day. I knew enough math to know that I needed 135 on the final to pass the course. And I said, it's
probably won't happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah. I mean, I started out really bad. Getting the first couple of tests, I had single digits. I was like I was in the Paisan Club in Latin class. And single digit results. And I said, I gotta learn this. You know, but the teacher was making no sense to me whatsoever. I just said, pick an epsilon, any epsilon. I said, what the hell is an epsilon?
For me.
So the major midterm was coming up, and I got it. So I studied and I studied and I studied, and I had the book out, and then I'm doing my calculations, and I ended up with a 32 on that one. And I said, that's it.
See,
not gonna happen.
My problem was we had classes 6 days a week.
Oh, wow.
All right, and my problem with being a freshman, you didn't get to pick the times for your classes, and I had an 8 o'clock 6 days a week, and that Saturday morning psych class, it just couldn't get through that 5. The days that I went, I did already. I got a D minus, and that was my English class I failed. And do you know why? I'm going to tell you why I failed.
Flunked English, your native language.
All right, I'm going to tell you why.
Freshman English.
I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I had Sister Anna Roberta for Latin.
Right.
And we were doing an exercise in there. We were talking about rhyming schematics, and he went through all these kind. He says, you know, and only second-rate poets use dactylic and spondic.
Oh!
And now, not being real smart. Then I said,
like
but
Virgil?
Professor, as I said, didn't Virgil write the Aeneid and that? Yes, he did. And isn't he considered a great writer? I never passed another thing in there. I'm going to keep my mouth shut from that on. I never passed another thing I wrote in that class.
Is that right?
Dr. Baldwin was his name, Professor Baldwin, and I from that, and that was like about 3 weeks into it. And
so he had an ego problem, huh?
He had an understanding problem. He didn't understand that he was wrong.
Wow.
Boy.
So, but you came in the defense of. I would think that any freshman who could pull that observation out of the air should get an A for the course.
Well,
right?
I didn't.
That's applying the knowledge you have to the situation.
You know, and if I was going to rate Professor Baldwin and Sister Anna Roberta, I'd probably have her a little bit ahead of him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a little, it was a little different for me, because when I was taking a Latin class, one day Miss Goggin, who was about 100 years old at the time and head of the classics department, hands us out a worksheet comparing Cicero with a speech that John F. Kennedy had given to the United Nations.
That's the same one Sister Anna Roberta gave us.
That's exactly what I said. And she said to me, "You know Sister Anna Roberta? How do you know Sister Anna Roberta?" I said, "She was my Latin teacher for 4 years."
You were blessed.
I was blessed. I was blessed. Yep, that's all I had to say.
Yep,
they all knew her in the classics department at Albany State.
And I remember her passing out Kennedy's, it's his inaugural address is what it was. And she went.
No, this one was one at the UN. This one she gave at the UN that Ted Sorensen had also written.
Okay.
But it was the same thing. But it was just full of Ciceronian.
You always say things 3 times.
Chiasmus and trichotomy.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, I graduated. I got my grades up.
Wow.
Oh.
Anyway.
That's it.
That's it for the 11th day of Christmas. We're not going to have a show for the 12th day of Christmas or the Epiphany, but we will probably be back next week on the 11th of January 2013 with more of... Oh, by the way, I'm Bob Going, Gavin Murdoch, Jim Nikosha. And we'll be back next week with more of the show with no name.
Boy, I can remember that class.
Today's the 11th.
Son of a... Pissed me off.